Good afternoon and welcome everyone to Ready, Set, Scope with myself, Leah, and my colleague Sean Coughlin, our Director of Product Management. We have several hundred people registered for this webinar today. Super exciting. Perfect. So like I said, my name's Leah. I'm the Director of Product and Content Marketing here at Encircle, and I'm joined by Sean Coughlin, our Director of Product Management. He is the man, one of the people responsible for bringing our Encircle Scope product to market. So Encircle Scope, this is a continuation of a webinar that we held back in November, where we gave everybody a preview of what was to come. But at that point, it was in very early development stages. We were showing you sort of things on the back end. Nothing was built or plumbed into the Encircle app yet. That is not the case today. We have been working really hard behind the scenes, and as of yesterday, we now have a production version in the app in beta that is ready to show everyone at this webinar today. So we are so excited. The future of scoping really is taking shape, and we don't want anyone to get left behind. We want everybody to take this journey with us. So Sean, if you can go to the next slide. What we're going to do today, we're going to give you an overview of what scope is. If you missed that webinar back in November, or if you've missed any of the conversations we've had around scope, we'll give you an overview of that. Sean's going to give you a live overview walkthrough of a real job where real scopes were produced, and give you a walkthrough of that in the app. Like I said, it is in production in the app in beta today. But the bulk of this webinar today is going to really talk about documentation excellence. AI is amazing. AI has so much incredible potential to drive efficiency in the business, but AI is not magic, and AI relies on really good data. And the data that it relies on is the documentation that you're collecting in Encircle. So that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today, is how can you get set up. That's why we call it Ready, Set, Scope. How can you get ready and set for scope through your documentation? How can we make sure that your teams are doing the things that they need to do to make sure that you're ready to take advantage of scope when it goes live? And then, of course, what I'm sure everybody is here to hear about is the launch details. So we'll cover some of those details, including when and how much and all of that good stuff. And then we'll wrap up with Q&A at the end. So I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to throw it over to Sean.
Perfect. Thanks, Leah. As Leah said, we're super excited for everyone to join here. And this has been quite a journey for us. Encircle over 13 years, serving yourselves and providing the best app for data collection and documentation on jobs. And we've spent and devoted the last year to creating this product, both from the back-end perspective, and then, as Leah said, it's now in our product and we're starting our testing. And with Encircle Scope, our whole goal was, how can we help you and on the work you need to do to create those defensible scopes? We've heard the line over and over again, if it's an insurance claim and you're talking with an adjuster, you're not really arguing over the price or, the cost that's on the estimate. You're actually arguing against the scope of work, which is the what and the why and the how of things need to get done, not necessarily how much it needs to cost, right? That's kind of a byproduct of all the things that you need to do. And to create that scope of work, and what people do today is leveraging Encircle, adding in all that information into Encircle, all the photos, all the notes, reports that you generate, that then helps yourself, your project managers, your estimators understand what happened on that job, and then turn that into things for their team to do, create an estimate on the back of that. And with the advent of AI and accessible AI, it's been around for a long time, but now services that we can pull together, not just one, but multiple services in the background, to take the data that you've entered into Encircle, and using this technology, saving yourselves hours of work to transform it into something usable that can then you use on downstream workflows. So going right from documentation to understanding what happened on the job, what needs to be done, and then getting you to that estimate. All within the context of us, restoration, restorers, IICRC standards. It's all validated and verified, and we have aimed for accuracy in what we want to do. Really, the goal is turning your team from authors where they need to spend hours understanding what happened in the job to create this information to share with whoever they need to share it. Let's turn them into editors where we can get you 90% of the way there, and then you can just take what you need to and run with it. And what we've really focused on beginning, because there's many types of scope of work, we've really honed in on the mitigation scope. So focusing on, water damage, fire, mold, impact, those types of jobs. We know there are content scopes of work and estimates that need to be done, and rebuild scopes and estimates that need to be done. We will get there, but we really wanted to focus on the mitigation, the start of that property loss and how you need to do it. And the whole purpose and what we want to do, like, it's great when technologies come out and they can help you. What's not great is when they force you and force your teams to completely change your processes. We did not want to do that. Your team is already in the field, leveraging Encircle, the best app in the field, to create and collect the documentation of what actually happened on the job, that source of truth. And you don't need to change anything. Continue to document the way you document. Use Encircle. All the data is already in there. And we've built this application on top of our infrastructure and that data that transforms it into the scope with a click of a button. So don't worry about change management. We're not disrupting anything or interrupting your work, but we want to change how you use your time going forward. We really think that's one of the most powerful things that we've done here. And the way we've done that is, as I've said, kind of through innovation, that we can provide interruption to how we do things normally without disrupting how you do things normally. So we already collect the data in Encircle, and to date, we've done really great jobs of taking that data, turning it into a report that you can then share to justify the work that you've done, to justify why you put line items X, Y, and Z on your estimate. Now what we're doing is going before you need to create that PDF report and using the data, whether it's photos, transcripts from the videos that you take, notes, floor plan data, which has all the measurement information. We will take that and transform that into a scope of work document. And from there, you can tell your teams in the field what needs to be done in the kitchen, in the bathroom. Have your PM or your estimator, depending on your workflows, take that scope and turn it into an estimate in Xactimate or whatever software that they use. So you can create tasks out of that. So, and then from there, with this, starting with the automation of generating a scope, over time, we're going to build on top of that and help add more innovation to other workflows that you have. It all really starts with what data is in the job, how can we first transform it into what is the scope of work, and then from there, right now, you can take it and do what you need. In the future, Encircle will take it and help you do more of what you need to do. So how does this engine work? We've kind of touched on it a bit, but the Encircle AI that we've developed kind of in the background is not simply a LLM that we've made a really fancy giant prompt for. We've architectured and designed an application that sits inside the Encircle platform that takes the data that you capture, which is really the first step. Leah mentioned this in the beginning. AI is great, but it's only as good as the inputs. So really strong, comprehensive data and as much context as you can. So with Encircle, we give you the ability to say, here are the rooms in the property. We have a kitchen, we have a bathroom, we have a bedroom. Allows you to put data inside of each of those rooms, photos and notes specific to that. We let you take a video of the entire loss, and then we'll take that transcript and use it to validate and connect it with the information. And then any readings and any floor plan data, all of that data that you put in there, we use and move into step 2, which is kind of the analysis phase. So this is where we have used, again, not just LLMs, because we produce this scope that's output that is leveraging generative AI to write it, but we have many nodes and many other technologies in there that solve the problems for us. So we have image and computer vision with image recognition. We have spatial calculations looking at the floor plan that then helps us derive equipment calculations and quantities for tasks that we may list out in the scope. We have data analysis and cross-referencing. So what does that mean? You record a walkthrough video that you say what's happened on the job. We take the transcript from that, connect it with the photos that we see in each of those rooms to help validate, yes, there's carpet in the bedroom, it is wet, what are the tasks that need to create from that. You mentioned there's, baseboards need to be detached. We detected baseboards in the photos. Let's make sure we call that out in the task. And then after step 3 is where you come in, where your expertise comes in, is we create this scope that provides you a narrative, a breakdown of room by room tasks, and then you can take that and review it, add things to it that make sense for your own SOPs or anything specific to that job, or remove things that if the right context wasn't there, we may have provided some information and it can all be corrected. But everything we put in there is justified against the ISERC standards, whether that's the S500, the S520, or the S700. So all those standards are used to validate and justify our scope output. And we've really, really focused on accuracy. So AI is super good. If you attended our webinar last week on our AI bootcamp, we really talked about kind of accuracy versus completeness. And normal LLMs, the generic LLMs that are out there, really go for completeness, and they have confidence in what they wrote, but it may not be accurate. Our approach that we know you need, which is accuracy over completeness. So based on the information that we have, we're going to ensure that what we write is accurate. And if there's some missing information, then we're not going to fill in the blanks on your behalf. We may call out where more information could be added to help the scope, and I'll show you what I mean by that. But really, we've gone for accuracy within our scope. Before we move on to showing the thing, I want to touch on something that's really important when we look at technology, particularly with AI and everything's out there. So data security and privacy. And we've talked about this before in previous webinars, but at the end of the day, the data is your data. That's our contract with you. It's in the Encircle terms and conditions. We store your data. You capture photos, you enter notes, you run reports. You own that data, but we store it on your behalf. So we are not the owners of the data, and we can't do anything with it without your permission, right? When we do use AI and do use the data, we are stripping out PII information. We are not sending over your customers' information, the addresses, your company information. We're not sending that over. We're just sending over information from the claim, the name of the room, the photos associated with it, the name of the note, the data in that note. Not, hey, this was a note from Sean's house that flooded 3 weeks ago. It's really contained to the data that we're sending over there. The other important thing is because you own the data and our contracts with the technology that we use, we are not training foundational models, and your data does not get used to train foundational models. While we may use ChatGPT, image analysis software, services in the background, that data cannot be taken by those companies, those services that we use to train their fundamental models. It stays within Encircle. You own your data. And of course, at the end of the day, everything is end-to-end encryption. We've always had that right from the mobile to our servers to the web. We ensure as best to our abilities that that data is secure and encrypted and no one can access it except for you and those that you want to have access to it. So let's see a scope. Enough of this slide, Sean. Let's just get right to the heart of the presentation. So here's a job that we did here at Encircle. Really simple, kind of category 1 water loss. I'm going to highlight kind of the data that we have in this claim before I go right into the scope. So if I jump over to a general note, so what we did on this job, and this is kind of a complete job that we ran through, and you can kind of look at this timestamp. This was done in late January. But the loss started kind of on the Sunday. We got there on the Tuesday. So we created a note that gave us the job description, the damage description. We kind of outlined a whole bunch of information on it. As the job progressed, we added general notes to this job to talk about the things that have been done. So some of this is standard practice for some of our customers. Some of this is best practice to help track how the job goes. From a core data perspective, in terms of what happened on the job, we did do a floor plan of the space. So this was a single level house. Kind of this is the property. For your benefit, what happened in the loss was the supply line here burst into the bedroom here and kind of affected the back half of the house. So that's kind of the loss that we're describing here. With that, these are all the rooms that were in the property, including rooms that were unaffected. We did document that. That's not something that always has to be done, but we did document that for our benefit. But really, if I go into kind of the primary bedroom, this is where most of the damage was, and it seeped into those other rooms, the bathroom, the hallway, and the back bedroom. but we took photos throughout the job. So these are photos towards the end of the job where we had equipment on the project, but really we did the initial inspection. We did our overview photos from each room. We did do a 360 photo of the room, which is a great way to provide overview data and kind of other information. So with that, we kind of repeated that process for each of these rooms. We added notes in each of the rooms, both on day one and throughout the job. Um, so once you've done that, once we've done kind of, we did this, we did initial inspection, we did a final inspection. I'm going to show you the scope at the end of the job. But in Encircle, what we're doing now is on web, you can see here that we've now exposed a new tab where you will see a new tab, which is Encircle Scopes. And we have a page that will list out all the scopes that are generated. To generate a scope, when we talked about, we didn't want to disrupt and interrupt the work that you normally do. So all you need to do now to generate a scope, both on web and mobile, and I can show mobile in a minute, is once there's data on this claim, you essentially click generate a new scope. Here you can see all of the structures and rooms that are on the job. If you have multiple structures, we will highlight multiple structures. We pre-select everything on the job, but if you wanted to remove some of the rooms that weren't affected, or you may use a room for instructions, you can deselect and remove them from the job itself. We won't take any of that data. And if there's general notes that you put in there, sometimes you may have a note in there around here's the garage code or information about other contacts on the job. You can deselect that and that won't go into it. So once you've done that, once you've selected the structure in the rooms and you've selected the general notes, all you do is hit generate. Of course, you have to put a title. Our UX make sure there's a title. So let me put this in here, mitigation scope, and then generate. And then it's off and generating. So this, and we'll talk about this later, but this job had a video walkthrough on it as well. And what's happening is we will pull out the transcript from that video and it gets used to reinforce everything that we put in the scope. Once the scope comes back, and what we've been seeing is less than 10 minutes on our jobs, those scopes will be returned. But let me jump into what it actually looks like. So this new section, we have this new item called an Encircle Scope, which is essentially a document within Encircle that will outline the core project information that we want to talk about. Before I get there, just so you know, this is a completely editable document if you need to. So you can review it, but you can actually go in and edit this document. So if there are things in here that you need to add or you need to cross-reference or you need to change or you want to remove, you can go in here and simply start adding text in there. We've introduced tables into Encircle, so you can actually add additional rows if you want to add additional rows. So you have the full ability to take this scope and manipulate it as you need to for that job. Now, I'm not going to go through how we edit it, but I just want to let you know that you have complete control over the output of this. Review it, change it up as needed. So the outline of the scope is pretty straightforward. In the beginning, we have this narrative project section. We talk about the timelines on the job. So when was the lost date? When was the time since intrusion? When work started? We pull all this information from whether you're using job events or from the timestamps and metadata on each of the photos and videos and notes. We have a quick summary of the project information. What was the source? What was the class and category of the water? And some of the spatial and dimensions, like what was the square footage? And on square footage, I'll talk to that. If there isn't a floor plan on the job, or if you haven't noted down dimensions, that's okay. You can continue to use scope. We're just going to highlight that there were no dimensions. And if you add dimensions, you'll get a more robust scope. You can see here, I got a little toast. That scope that I just started generating about 2 minutes ago has already completed. So it's pretty quick to generate these things based on all the data in the job. The next thing that we have is kind of a narrative of the project itself. What's a quick summary of, based on the information from your notes and what we've parsed out from the video transcript, from all the photos, from hydro information, what happened on this job. And this summary is really good that if you need to produce a 12-hour or 24-hour report to send to a carrier, you can simply copy and paste this and add that to your report, or add the scope itself to a PDF report that you can use. Next, we get into what we think is the most important part, which are the tasks. And we've broken this down into project level tasks. So if you're used to using Xactimate and you create kind of a general folder for kind of the high level tasks that don't belong in any specific room, these are the tasks that align to that. So whether it's, was this emergency service? Are there after hours? Um, did you need floor protection? Kind of all these general things that you should and could apply to your estimate in the project. And the language that we use, while it's not a specific Xactimate code or anything, we are using kind of the right language that you and our industry are used to when we talk about these line items. So when you need to go and create that estimate, these line up perfectly with what you would actually use in Xactimate or other software. Now we get into the heart of the scope, which is the room by room breakdown of all of the affected rooms. So we provide a quick summary of what happened in this specific room. We call out any dimensions that were specific to that room and where they came from. We have affected materials that we pulled out from not only notes in the photos, but from hydro data. If you created a moisture point, we use that information to cross-reference and validate and verify the materials that we call out here. And then for each room, we call out the specific tasks based on the narration and all that data that we feel need to happen in this room specific to the mitigation of that job. And then we go and repeat that for every single room that was identified as affected within this project. And if this isn't a simple copy and paste, each room is analyzed independent and you'll see very specific details. So for instance, in this one, this is the primary bedroom where the loss happened. In the video, we talked about, oh, we need to detach the baseboards from the job and use it. We parsed that out, looking at floor plan. We saw the square footage of that room, and we added detached baseboards, and here's a linear square footage from that information. So really synthesizing that data and producing this output to help you tell your team what you need to do. Hey, make sure we remove those baseboards, and then use that for your estimate once you go to create it. And again, we repeat this on and on for each of the rooms that were on that job. We also list out any unaffected areas as well, just to highlight based on the information, whether they were only in the floor plan or we pulled it out from other sources. Here's other data that was on the job that we don't feel is impacted by this loss. And if you provide us dimensions and we know it's a water loss, we will do kind of the S500 equipment calculation for you. We will group the rooms in the drying chambers. If you used hydro, that data goes in to help us organize the rooms into drying chambers as well. And we really call out, how many dehues and air movers are needed at the project level. But then we go and break down the air movers per room based on what we need, what is calculated from the S500. We highlight placement suggestions on how to place the equipment in there. And then the kind of last section is really the IIC references. So whenever we've quoted and calculated the category of loss or water of loss or other information, we call out the specific sections of the S500 or the S520 or S700 and highlight this here. So you can use this information maybe as F9 notes and Xactimate to justify certain line items that are there as well. And lastly, we have a data quality note section, which will kind of information from our system to you on here's where we pulled some data. Here's some data that we may think is missing. So for instance, if there was no floor plan and there's no dimensions, we'll highlight, hey, you were missing some floor plan and dimensions. So this is really like incredible that within 3 minutes, based on the work you already had to do, which was calculate or which was document the room, we've produced and provided this scope. And this all lives on mobile as well. So if I go into mobile, you can see this scope. Here's the one that I just generated, and you can review and edit that. So if you want to do it in the field, you can do it in the field as well. Now I think I'm done for a few more minutes, and I'll pass it back over to Leah.
Great. Thanks, Sean. So one of the things that Sean has talked about is, and I mentioned it at the beginning, is that the scope output, the quality of the scope that you get is really dependent on the data that is available in the file. We prioritize accuracy. If the data is not available, we will not make assumptions about that project. The people on site capturing the data and the context of that project, that is key. They are the ground truth for that project. Encircle Scope is never going to invent things. It is going to call out in the scope where data was missing or unavailable. That is a key differentiator for what we're doing here versus doing something in a traditional like chat GPT or a chatbot where you're asking it to produce a scope. Its priority, like chat GPT's priority, is a complete answer, and it's really good at writing. So it's going to give you a really beautifully written scope, but it's going to it might throw a bunch of details in that it's made assumptions about based on data that was unavailable. So all that to say, how you get the most accurate data starts in the best app for field documentation, which for almost 14 years now, Encircle has been the most trusted field documentation platform for restoration contractors. It is easy to use, it's reliable, and it contains all of the possible tools that you could need to document the context and data that needs to be documented on that job to justify your scope of work, which is what we did in the past. We would create really great reports with all of this data that helped you justify your scope of work. Now we're taking all of that data and putting that data to work for you and actually creating that scope of work for you. That using this app that actually works in the field. It's a field first solution. It's easy to use. Technicians love it. That's why we've been around for as long as we've been around. And it includes things like all your photos, your videos, including 360 that we introduced last year. All your water mitigation, so moisture readings, drying chambers, dry standards, psychrometrics, all of those things in hydro, contents, all of your notes, your floor plans. Sean talked about measurements. Measurements are critical to finding scope and adding those quantities and square footages to the scope. So we have floor plans in there. Obviously, we can create detailed reports, and we have additional things that don't necessarily go into scope, but just round out our platform, things like payments, custom forms, and the ability to talk to your end users. Sean, if you want to go to the next slide. But I think it's really important that we talk about what is the critical documentation, that key documentation to produce an incredible scope. What are those sort of the bare minimums? What are the standard operating procedures, the SOPs that your team should be doing on every loss so that you can get the best scope possible? And it really boils down to 4 things. The first one is a description of the loss. And what Sean and I are going to do over the next 10 or 15 minutes is go through each of these 4 items and talk about how the different ways that you can get that data into Encircle. It's not a specific process that you need to follow. There's a couple of different ways depending on what works best for you. So the first thing that we need is a good description of the loss. The second thing is measurements. Getting measurements into the app or into the scope is important for generating equipment calculations and for quantities and things like that. Without measurements, we won't provide those things. We won't make them up, but we just will leave them sort of blank with a caveat that we didn't have measurements. We can't do this. Photos, of course, are important. We're going to look at photos. We're going to use our image analysis to verify and validate against the description and make sure that everything makes sense. We're going to extract materials and identify different materials. We're going to identify fixtures that are in there and just make sure that everything is cohesive and synthesized and makes sense. So photos, of course, are important. And then that room-specific information. When you get into writing your estimate, the estimates are written room by room, and we want to make sure that we're breaking down those tasks into room, that room-specific information. And so the most helpful thing is to use the Encircle app as intended and create those rooms and put all of that room data into those rooms specifically. So let's go through each of these one by one. Before we get to that, we have put together an incredible resource for you. So we've put together this page, a documentation excellence resource for restoration teams. It includes a whole bunch of really great checklists, templates, cue cards, everything that you need to really level up your team's documentation in Encircle. I want to point out specifically the template for the documentation excellence workshop. It's linked from this page. It's a really great workshop that you can run on a production meeting or a weekly meeting with your team and just assess where you're at, see where you are at with your baseline documentation today, implement some new things, and see where you're at a couple of weeks from now and see if you can improve the documentation. There's also a link to register for some live trainings, and we'll provide that link at the end of this course as well. So just a really great resource if you want to help your team level up their documentation. So we talked about providing a good damage description or a description of what happened on that property. And the gold standard, the way that we really encourage everybody to do this is through video. Do a video walkthrough. Now, I should mention, we're not going to use the video itself as part of the scope. We're not using any sort of video analysis. What we're going to do is extract the transcript from that video. But why we encourage a video walkthrough is show and tell. We've been doing show and tell since we were in kindergarten, right? So you want to walk the property, provide your expert narration. Tell the phone, tell everyone what's going on in that property. What do you see? What do you hear? What's going on? And provide that additional expert level of context and detail. And we're going to take all of that rich contextual information and improve the scope accuracy. So make sure you're giving an overview of the situation, the source of loss, describe how the water migrated throughout the property. Go into each of the rooms that were affected and talk about the resulting damage. Give an overview of how the room was affected, the impacted materials. One of my colleagues, he talks about, AI is, again, it's an amazing tool, and image analysis is so great, and you can, use Google Lens, and you can use your iPhone to identify flowers and stuff. But when it comes to water mitigation, dark carpet in a picture looks the same whether it's wet or whether it's dry. AI can't know if that's wet or dry. The person on the site is going to be the one that can provide that information. So if you go into the primary bedroom and it has dark carpet, you want to say the carpet is saturated. That's a key piece of contextual information, along with other things that are in the file that are going to help build that scope. Other things to include in that walkthrough: safety considerations. So any potential hazards that need to be considered, like mold, asbestos, lead, anything like that. And then describe the next steps. Describe the initial steps that are needed to mitigate the loss. So to get that damage description, best practices is a video walkthrough. There's other ways to do it. This is just the one that we would encourage you to use. Sean's gonna give an example of one that we really like.
Yeah, I think we should do what we say and do a show and tell. So this is a video of that we have on that file that I just showed you, that Joe and our team walked this job and narrated it. So we'll play. It's a 2-minute video. We'll just play a portion of it. But when creating this video, it's important, where we think best to do that is find the room where the source happened, where the loss happened, and start there when you start your video. And then you can leave that space and then start walking. You'll see Joe do that kind of in this job.
All right, let's go ahead and capture the damage. So we're in the primary bedroom. Source of loss is going to be this wall over here. What we have is the supply line that has become damaged in the wall, wet the carpet. As you can see, we got baseboard, drywall, and some contents. Scope of work: we're going to need to extract the carpet, lift the carpet out, potentially remove the padding. We're also going to have to detach the baseboards and manipulate this furniture. In the next room, we have a little bit of hardwood floor in the hallway, and it appears that the wall.
So I'll pause there in the video. So we talked about, as he left the primary bedroom, so when he entered the room, he called out the name of that room, and that way we can take that transcript and that data. So when Joe says primary bedroom, we can align that with, in the file, we had a room called primary bedroom with a whole bunch of photos. So that allows us to match these things and increase our confidence as we justify and validate the scope. And he said the same thing, that when he left the primary bedroom and entered into the hallway, he called out the hallway, and then everything he speaks about that we can then use. So it's pretty powerful. Like Leah said, this is but one of many ways to add the job description. You can create a note. You can use the speech to text part of iPhone and Android, or do a video. We think the video works quite well. I think moving on, I think we got that one done, Leah. We can move on to measurements.
We did. I do want to answer one question that was in the chat before I lose track of it. And I just want to remind everyone, If you do have a question, please throw it into the Q&A box or I will lose track of it. But I think there was a question asked specifically about video and I want to address it now. So the video analysis only in English or can we also do it in Spanish? I think it's important that you can, and Sean, correct me if I'm wrong here, but you can do the video walkthrough in English, French, or Spanish.
That's correct. Yeah.
And we will absorb that information into Encircle AI and into the scope, and you will get that insight into the output as well. So walk and talk in your preferred language.
And just following on language, so that's completely correctly. We detect the language of that video. The transcript is done in that language. We will bring it into, the computer language that it needs to parse it out and then produce that output. The scope can be done and produced in English, Spanish, or French, similar to some of our other functions in Encircle, depending on the browser language. So if your Chrome browser is set to French, the scope output will be French. If it's set to English, then you'll get English as well.
Okay, one of the next key pieces of data that we need for scope is measurements. Now, again, it's a key piece of information to get an incredible scope. If you don't provide measurements, you'll still get a good scope. They just won't have those quantities and square footage and measurements, and you won't get equipment calculations and things like that. So best practices to get an incredible scope, a really useful scope, is to provide those measurements in the app. So there's a couple of ways you can provide those measurements. The gold standard, the fastest and easiest way to do it is to do an Encircle floor plan. And Sean's going to talk through some of the best practices for capturing and making sure you're getting a really good floor plan. But some other ways that you can get measurements into the app. If you're using Hydro on a water job and you're adding room dimensions into your drying chambers, we're gonna take that information in. If you have a floor plan and Hydro, that's just extra data. We're gonna look at that information and we're gonna compare and contrast and synthesize and make sure that everything makes sense and matches up and aligns. So you can use floor plan, you can use Hydro, or you can put it in a room note, room dimensions into a room note. So go into that room, create a quick room note and enter the dimensions, and we'll add that information into the scope as well. So measurements not absolutely required to get an output. You still get an output without measurements, but to get, the best version of scope and the most useful version for you is to make sure there's measurements in there in some form.
Yeah, and I think as Leah said, like floor plan is the gold standard, and we'll show a video of it quickly. So here's kind of a best practices that we have on how to get the most accurate floor plan possible. So this is one of the videos that we have in our Learning Hub. Please go out there, get lots of information on not only how to do a floor plan, but how to use Encircle and all the features that we have. But here's a quick walkthrough of like the best practice of performing the scan and walking the property.
When it's time to scan, remember, your phone can't do all the work on its own. You need to move your feet. Don't just stand in the doorway and pan your phone around. Step fully into each room and walk along the perimeter. Move around beds, furniture, and obstacles so your camera can see every wall and corner. Think of it as taking your phone for a walk. You're showing it the space. Here's a simple mental check. Make sure your right shoulder has walked past every wall in the room. If your right shoulder hasn't passed it, your phone probably hasn't seen it. Try to stay about 3 to 6 feet away from the walls. That's the ideal range for capturing accurate data.
Right there, I think the biggest trick when, we've launched this, is it 3 years now, Leah? It's been quite a while since we've put floor plan out there, but that keeping in mind, if I can just walk the perimeter and keep my shoulder against the wall, and if there's a couch in the way, go around the couch and kind of try to get back to that wall. If there's a bed in the way, that will essentially kind of paint the entire space with the video and allow us to then take that video and analyze it and produce the floor plan. And that, I think that has really helped me ensure that every floor plan that I do has like high accuracy to it. And as Leah said, like dimensions are really important to get as accurate and more complete scope. But to do the floor plan, I think we're under 6 hours that you'll get the floor plan back. If you want to get a quick scope of work done on that day one after the initial generation, run that scope first, do it and get that kind of initial scope without the dimensions. Once that floor plan's back, you're able to run it again on the job, create a second one, and make it more complete. And next, we'll talk about photos, our core bread and butter of Encircle, photos, right, Leah? Oh, you're muted, Leah.
All right, there we go. Okay, yeah, photos. It's our bread and butter. Everybody knows if you didn't document it, it didn't happen. Photos are so important. And in Encircle, we give you the opportunity to capture as many photos as you need, including 360. So that visual documentation provides the justification of what's been written and said about the job. We are not going to make assumptions, though, based on just the photos alone. So again, I'm going to continue to reiterate that providing your expert human commentary, your restorer expertise, what you see, feel, hear, smell on that job needs to go into the job. So, but photos are critical to providing some of that visual evidence and validation for what is being written and said on that job. So definitely create those rooms in Encircle. By creating the rooms, that's going to help to keep the data organized and match what's happening in the real world. We highly recommend integrating your Ricoh 360 cameras with Encircle. It's included in your subscription. You don't have to pay any extra for it. So it's a really fast way to capture an overview of each room. Then capture those detailed photos of specific damage provided. Show the equipment in place, show the baseboard, show any mold that you find behind the walls. All of those things are going to provide the validation to what you've already provided in the context. You can mark up your photos. So if you want to highlight a specific area, Encircle Scope is going to look at the markup that you've done on that, and it's going to flag that, oh, there's something extra important in this photo that I need to look at. So to provide even greater amount of detail and context.
Yeah, and if we look at like the sample job that we've been walking through for this entire job, I'll show it up on my phone here. So this is the primary bedroom, and we have photos throughout the job as well. So remember, you can run the scope as the job progresses. So do that initial scope on day one, understand what happened. As you can see here, we had photos of the meters as well as photos of the meters within hydro. We have 360 is a great way to show the overview of each of those spaces. You can do that right here in Encircle. And one thing that I like about kind of using our app for photos is when I'm taking photos, we've tried to make it really easy for you to not break what you're doing. So within the camera, you can take photos of each of the rooms. You don't actually need to leave the camera as you move the space. So if you want to focus on, I need to take all the photos of the affected spaces. As you leave that primary bedroom and walk into the hallway, simply select the hallway. You can see it's highlighted at the top. As you take photos now, it goes straight into that room. So you don't even have to leave the camera to stop what you're doing to take photos. And the same thing with 360. You can bring your Ricoh with you, put it in the middle of the room, capture that photo, go back to taking overview photos, damage photos, and then move all that equipment to the next room without leaving the screen. You can just switch rooms. Again, we've just tried to make it really easy and efficient for your team to capture that data and those photos for the job.
Great. And last but not least are notes and note templates. So I talked about the video walkthrough as sort of the gold standard for capturing that description of the loss, providing that damage description. But notes are another great way to do that, as well as note templates. So giving those clear and consistent notes, whether that's upfront at the beginning or daily sort of progress updates throughout the job. You can provide extra room details, so information about how the closets that were in there, windows, doors, safety hazards, things that help reinforce what you've provided in the video walkthrough. I'm not going to go through all of these, but I want to specifically hone in on the note template. So this is a feature that we introduced several years ago now, but it gives you an ability to create sort of a standardized template for your team of things that you might want them to provide on every job. So maybe it's a daily progress update. What did you do at the end of the day? And you provide specific lists of things, and they just need to fill in the blanks. So Sean's going to show you some of these things, but leveraging notes, again, it's going to give us that opportunity to ingest that really rich contextual information that you provided from your human in the loop expertise to generating a more robust scope.
Yeah, and I think the power of note templates, similar to the power of scope, is providing consistency from every job and whoever is on that job. So, here's an example of kind of the general notes on that job where we have a note template for a daily checklist that needs to go through. So for someone to use it, they can go into general notes or go into the specific room that they want. They can create a note, hit the template, and then they'll pull from all the templates that you've set up in your job. We introduced rich text last year, so you can create checklists. If I look at kind of a completion checklist, that who did the final walkthrough of the job? Did they remove all the equipment? Was the COC signed? Super easy for someone to know what they need to do on that final checklist. Or if they're trying to start the job and do that initial investigation, we'll just replace that. You can see here that we've added that information in here, and they can just, they know exactly what they need to fill out for that job description, in addition to everything else we do. So it really just helps drive consistency and ease of use for your teams in the field. And I think the last thing, Leah, that we want to talk about is Hydro.
Yeah. And Sean, I'm just looking at the time. We've only got 12 minutes left. So I think if we just, I'll give an overview of Hydro and maybe add some context, and maybe you don't show the app, but Hydro data is additional context that can be used by Scope to drive accuracy and validation. So if you are using Hydro, it's the water mitigation tool, the checklist to documenting water jobs. So psychrometrics, material readings. We have an equipment calculator in there. Gives you alerts and notifications, but Scope is going to use this to validate the other things that are seen in there. And again, if you put measurements into Hydro, it's going to take those measurements in. If you put the source of loss into there, that's that extra context that it's going to provide. I talked about that, like wet carpet, dark carpet being wet versus dry. If you didn't mention it in your damage description and there's only a picture of carpet, the visual analysis isn't going to know if that carpet is wet or dry, but you may have entered a moisture point in Hydro that shows that the carpet is completely saturated. So it's going to give that extra level of detail and information in that room, in that drying chamber, to validate where things are affected and what needs to be done. Anything else you want to add there, Sean?
No, I think you've topped it. It's just, again, it's additional context to help create the most accurate scope that we can create based on the data on that job.
Awesome. So that was a quick overview. And Sean, I don't know if you've seen it. We have like 35 questions in the Q&A. So I'm trying, I don't want to rush everything, but I want to be able to try and get some of these questions. I know we won't be able to answer all of them, but there's a bunch that I do want to get to. But I just want to wrap up and reiterate that Encircle is the best tool for restoration contractors to document in the field. What once was used to just justify and defend your scope of work is now actually being used through the incredible powers of AI and how we've implemented it within our platform and our architecture. It's actually creating that scope of work for you. What we're seeing with the people who have tested this in our alpha program, and then as we head into beta, dramatically cutting the amount of time that's spent on these on admin tasks, specifically this sort of like forensic deep dive investigation into figuring out what happened on the job, writing scope notes and translating that into an estimate. What we're seeing, people are saving anywhere from an hour to 4 hours per job and significantly reducing that cognitive load and that cognitive time that they are required to sort of write out scope notes. And so it's really taking them from being authors and authoring the scope and writing out those notes to just being an expert strategic reviewer. So from an author to an editor or a reviewer. What we're also seeing is it's capturing invisible revenue. So AI doesn't get tired. That's the beauty of it. It doesn't care that it's got 400 jobs on the go. It's going to do the things that you ask it to do. So it's going to be able to identify line items and tasks, equipment or safety measures that might get missed, especially if people are overworked or tired or in a CAT situation and just, we're human and we miss things. So it's going to provide those missing line items and that invisible revenue. It's going to ensure what people are really seeing is it's driving consistency. Scoping is not a process that has a lot of consistency across the industry right now. What we've learned from the market is scoping looks different across every business and even within a business. Somebody might write scope notes in a note on their phone. Somebody might write it in an email. Somebody might not write it at all. They might just go from memory directly into an estimate. So there isn't consistency. And that results in inconsistencies in estimates as well. So what the people who are testing this is providing consistency not only across jobs, within jobs and within their across their teams. So from one PM to another PM, as long as the data is there, the output is the same. And it's giving this ability to kickstart estimating and estimates and work orders right from the get-go, right from day one. So improving the turnaround times and improving your SLAs with whether it's with a TPA or a carrier to get those estimates to carriers faster with line items that are organized and most importantly justified by the scope of work backed by the IICRC. So speaking of feedback from people who have tried this and seen this, we're just going to play. It's a 1-minute video with some feedback, initial reactions from restorers.
It helps us to explain the narrative, provide the information, and not have to spend 4 hours typing. We just read, edit, and send. So much quicker.
It came out pretty dang on the money, really. So it's got attention to detail that I wouldn't have even probably put in there.
The two things that really stood out to me about the AI scope was it quoting the S500, pulling those up because we're an independent restoration company, so we have to defend our estimates all the time. So inserting those into the scope really helps.
I will say that I really like the idea of our project managers being more consistent because we are all over the place, not only with our scoping, with our pricing and so on as well.
All details are so amazing, very easy to understand, and I love it.
Fantastic tool. I mean, this is crazy that scope was produced with the square footage of removals and recommendations and equipment, and yeah, good job.
I think that this is a piece that might really change the whole landscape for restoration people.
Amazing. Sean, thank you so much. Thank you to everyone who joined. I think we had around 400 people join today. So many questions. We probably should have booked this for longer. Sean, any last words?
I think we did it. We covered a lot. So thanks, everyone. Can't wait for everyone to try it starting March 18th. We're really excited.
All right. Thank you, everyone.